It is a warm evening in Barcelona, May 2020. The air is thick with the scent of salt and city dust, but inside a luxury apartment overlooking the Mediterranean, the atmosphere is freezing cold. A man sits on a plush leather sofa, staring at a specially modified handset. It looks like a standard Android device, but the camera and microphone have been physically removed. It runs a dual operating system. To the outside world, it is a dummy phone. To the underworld, it is a command center. His name is Jamie Rothwell. In the sprawling grey estates of Salford and Bolton, back in the rain-soaked north of England, his name is whispered with a mixture of reverence and terror. But on this device, he is simply Livelong. He is a ghost, a man who does not officially exist. From this living room in Spain, he is moving armies. He is not touching the cocaine. He is not holding the guns. He is moving pixels on a screen. A few taps of his thumb, and 3,000 miles away in Warrington, a team of hitmen prepares a loaded firearm. Another message, and 200 kilograms of high-purity cocaine begins its journey from a bonded warehouse in the Netherlands to the streets of Greater Manchester. He believes he is untouchable. He believes the encryption protecting his messages is military grade, a fortress that no police force on Earth can breach. He is wrong, because at this exact moment, he is not alone in the room. In a sense, the National Crime Agency is sitting right next to him. French and Dutch police are reading over his shoulder every order he types, every photograph of an AK-47 he uploads. Every boast about his £26 million empire is being intercepted, decrypted and read in real time by detectives in a quiet office in London. They are watching a ghost solidify into flesh and blood, and they are waiting for the perfect moment to strike. How did a local lad from Salford rise to become an international baron, orchestrating a global cartel from the sun lounges of Europe? How did he build an empire so vast that he could order a shooting while eating his breakfast? And how did a single piece of technology, the very thing that made him powerful, become the weapon that destroyed him? This is the inside story of the Livelong syndicate. To understand the scale of Jamie Rothwell's operation, you have to understand the soil he grew from. Salford and the surrounding boroughs of Greater Manchester have a long, hard history. It is a place of tight-knit communities, industrial pride, and curb, in certain pockets, generational crime. In the shadow of the glittering media centers and football stadiums, there is another economy. A shadow economy. Jamie Rothwell was not born into a vacuum. He came up in a world where reputation was currency. In the early days, before the villas in Spain and the encrypted phones, it was about territory. It was about standing your ground on the pavement. But Rothwell was different from the street-level thugs, who were content with selling ounces of cannabis or settling petty scores. He had what detectives call strategic hunger. He did not just want to be a player, he wanted to be the bank. By his 30s, Rothwell had transcended the postcode wars. He understood that the real money was not in the hand-to-hand combat of street dealing. It was in logistics. It was in supply chains. He realized that if you could control the flow of product, the rivers of cocaine and heroin flowing into the UK, you did not need to get your hands dirty. You could sit above the fray. He began to distance himself from the physical act of crime. He moved his base of operations overseas, joining the exodus of British criminals to the Costa del Crime in Spain. This was a tactical move. In Spain, he was harder to surveil. He was harder to arrest. He could blend in with the expat community, living a life of leisure, while his orders were carried out by a hierarchy of lieutenants back home. But to run an empire from 1,000 miles away, you need a voice. You need a way to speak that cannot be heard. For years, this was the weak point of every major cartel. Phone taps, bugged cars, informants wearing wires. Communication was always the vulnerability. Then came EncroChat. It was marketed as a legitimate service for privacy-conscious celebrities and high-net-worth individuals, but in reality, EncroChat was the WhatsApp for gangsters. For £1,500 for a 6-month contract, you got a handset that was essentially a black box. No SIM card tracking, no GPS history. A panic white button that could erase the entire device instantly if you were arrested. For Jamie Rothwell, this was the holy grail. He adopted the handle Livelong. It was a statement of intent. He planned to survive. He planned to rule forever. Under the cloak of this encryption, the Rothwell syndicate exploded in size. The police investigation, later codenamed Operation Venetic, would reveal the staggering mechanics of his machine. This was not a gang, it was a corporation. Rothwell sat at the top, the CEO. Below him was a carefully structured board of directors. His right-hand man was Craig Mackinson, known on EncroChat as Tops HG or Doctors HG Guard. Mackinson was the regional manager, the man on the ground in Manchester, who translated Rothwell's digital orders into physical action. Then there was Callum Morris, known as Keyhole, a terrifying figure who enforced the syndicate's will and managed the more violent aspects of the business. James Close, known as Mouse, handled the logistics, the safe houses, the stash spots. The scale of the commerce was industrial. In just a few short months of intercepted messages from March to June 2020, police watched as Rothwell brokered deals for over 200 kilograms of cocaine, at a wholesale price of roughly £35,000 to £40,000 per kilo. The revenue was astronomical. But it was not just white powder. There was heroin, there was ketamine, there was cash, millions of pounds of it, bundled into vacuum-sealed packs, moved in shopping bags and car boots, laundered through shell companies and front businesses. But the most chilling aspect of the Livelong empire was not the drugs. It was the hardware. Jamie Rothwell was not just a drug trafficker, he was an arms dealer. The EncroChat logs revealed a man obsessed with firepower. In one conversation, he discusses the sale of AK-47 assault rifles. These are not street pistols, they are weapons of war. He offers them for £10, $500 apiece. He talks about them casually, like he is selling used cars. Few AKs for sale, he types. The messages revealed photographs of the weapons. Glossy, high-resolution images of machine guns laid out on kitchen tables, next to sandwiches and cups of tea. It was a terrifying juxtaposition of the domestic and the deadly. Rothwell and his associates treated these weapons as commodities, trading them to other gangs, fueling conflicts across the Northwest. They had access to scorpions, machine pistols, and ammunition in bulk. The syndicate operated a bonded warehouse system. They did not just move drugs, they stored them. They held stock for other criminals, charging a fee for the security. It was a full-service criminal logistics hub. And because they felt so safe, so protected by the technology, they got sloppy. They got arrogant. Craig Mackinson, the right-hand man, was so comfortable that he sent photos of bundles of cash sitting on his own kitchen counter. The distinctive marble worktop would later be matched by police to his actual home address. James Close sent selfies. He sent pictures of a tattoo on his arm. They were leaving a trail of digital breadcrumbs, convinced that no one would ever see them. But the eyes watching them were not just local police. They were international. In early 2020, French and Dutch investigators managed a technical miracle. They found a way to push a malware update to the EncroChat servers. It was a Trojan horse. Every time a user unlocked their phone, the device secretly sent a copy of the screen and the messages to a server controlled by the police. Suddenly, the lights turned on in the dark room of organized crime. In the UK, the National Crime Agency and Greater Manchester Police were inundated with data. It was an intelligence overload. They were seeing thousands of messages a day. Murder plots, drug deals, money counts. They had to triage the information, prioritizing threats to life. And Jamie Rothwell was a priority. The detectives watched as Livelong orchestrated a shooting in Warrington. A rival gang member, a man named Leon Cullen, was the target. Rothwell put the contract out to tender, offering a bounty to anyone who would do the job. On April 24, 2020, a man was shot on Poplars Avenue in Warrington. He survived, but with life-changing injuries. Rothwell had ordered it from his sofa in Spain, thousands of miles away. The messages showed his cold satisfaction. It was just business. The police were in a race against time. They knew the EncroChat hack would not stay secret forever. Once the criminals realized the platform was compromised, they would scatter. They had to build the case, identify the real-world identities behind the handles, and execute the strikes before the network went dark. They pieced it together. Livelong was Rothwell. They linked him through travel dates, mentioned in messages, through references to family members, through the specific locations he discussed. Keyhole was Morris. Topsrage Irish Large was Mackinson. The web was drawn. On June 13, 2020, EncroChat realized they had been hacked. They sent a panic message to all users: domain seized by government entities, power off, and physically destroy your device immediately. Panic swept through the underworld. Phones were smashed with hammers, thrown into rivers, microwaved. But it was too late. The data was already on the police servers. Jamie Rothwell, sensing the heat, went on the run. He knew the game was up. He left Spain. He moved through Europe, a true fugitive, using false documents. Moving at night, he ended up in the Netherlands, the traditional hub for European drug trafficking. He thought he could disappear into the fog of the Amsterdam underworld. But the police were relentless. The Northwest Regional Organized Crime Unit, working with the NCA and Dutch authorities, tracked him. They used the very intelligence he had generated against him. They knew his habits. They knew his contacts. In December 2020, the net closed. It was not a dramatic shootout. It was a tactical stop. Rothwell was in a taxi in Amsterdam, perhaps believing he was on his way to another safe house, or a meeting. The blue lights flashed. Armed Dutch police surrounded the vehicle. He was dragged out. The king of Salford, the untouchable Livelong, was handcuffed on a cold Dutch street. Back in Manchester, the raids had already begun. It was a synchronized strike. Doors were smashed in simultaneously across Wigan, Bolton, and Salford. Callum Morris, the enforcer, was taken. Craig Mackinson was arrested at a caravan park in Lincolnshire, where he was trying to lay low on a family holiday. When police searched their homes, they found the physical evidence to back up the digital ghosts. They found the hydraulic presses used to compress cocaine. They found the tick lists or ledgers of debt. They found the cash. At James Closer's home, they found a drugs processing facility in a large garden shed. It was a factory, hidden in plain sight in suburbia. They matched the marble worktop in Mackinson's kitchen to the photos of cash sent on EncroChat. The arrogance of the criminals had become the evidence for their conviction. The legal battle was complex. Rothwell and his team initially tried to deny the attribution. They claimed the phones were not theirs, or that the hack was illegal. But the weight of the evidence was crushing. The sheer volume of messages, the selfies, the personal details, the minute-by-minute commentary of their lives made denial impossible. The court case at Manchester Crown Court was the final act of the drama. The prosecution laid out the Livelong empire in forensic detail. They showed the jury the messages where Rothwell ordered the shooting. They showed the photos of the AK-47s. They showed the spreadsheets of drug profits. The judge, Judge John Potter, did not mince words. He described Rothwell as a professional criminal who was willing to cause loss and misery to others for his own greed. He noted the arrogance of the group, their belief that they were smarter than the law. In August 2025, the hammer fell. Jamie Rothwell, the man who wanted to live long as a kingpin, was sentenced to 43 years in prison. He will be an old man before he breathes free air again. His associates fell with him. Callum Morris, the keyhole enforcer, received 38 years. Craig Mackinson got 27 years. James Close received nearly 14 years. In total, the gang was sentenced to more than 200 years behind bars. The impact of dismantling the Rothwell syndicate was immediate. A major pipeline of Class A drugs into the Northwest was severed. A supply of military-grade weapons was taken off the market. The message to the underworld was clear. There is no such thing as a secret communication. There is no technology that can protect you from the consequences of your actions. For the people of Salford and Warrington, the streets are marginally safer. The man who could order a shooting from a beach in Spain is now staring at the walls of a high-security cell. The story of the Livelong cartel is a modern parable of crime. It is a story of hubris. It is a story of how technology elevated a gang to the level of a multinational corporation, and how that same technology brought it crashing down. Jamie Rothwell built a £26 million empire on a foundation of zeros and ones. He thought he was a ghost in the machine, but he forgot one simple rule of the digital age: everything leaves a trace. And when the lights get turned on, the ghosts have nowhere to hide.